back on the record at 11:09 a.m.
Okay, sir, do you have Exhibit 52 in front of you?
Yes.
And do you see that in the final box of this pharmacy information sheets, there is a narrative description that says Food City KVT is the parent company. Grocery store located in fast-growing part of Knoxville. Pharmacy is located in the grocery store. Part of Topco, a collection of a buying group. MCK began reviewing farm in mid-June. Levels of Oxy high. Stopped supplying CS in late June. Mickey Glazer, Director of Pharmacy. Bearden Clinic is close by. Prescribers associated with clinic, located in clinic. Bill visited the clinic as well. Didn't see any signs of bad behavior. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, is this written by McKesson?
Yes.
So McKesson's reporting that Bearden Clinic is close by,
Yes.
and he is reporting that McKesson stopped prescribing controlled substances in late June.
Objection form. McKesson doesn't prescribe anything.
Let me step back from that. He's reporting that McKesson stopped supplying controlled substances in late June to Food City.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you see a listing of prescribers starting with Teodora Nagu?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Do you see that?
Yes.
And you see Barbara Brouch.
Yes.
You see Brandy Burchell.
Yes.
You see Christina Collins.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether they all work at the Bearden Clinic?
Objection.
I do not.
Okay. Could you have you looked since you started preparing this for this deposition to see whether any of those prescribers worked at the Bearden Clinic?
Objection form. Objection beyond the scope.
You see that? Could you look at the notice of deposition that's Exhibit 1? And do you see on page 19, there's an attachment to?
Yes.
Okay, and do you see that some of these prescribers, Teodora Nagu and Brandy Burchell, are listed as associated with Bearden Healthcare Associates?
Objection form. Foundation scope.
Do you see that?
I mean, I'm looking to see if I see all of them.
I see only two, Teodora Nagu and Brandy Burchell.
That's all
Do you
I
see
saw.
those?
I'm sorry, yeah.
Now, here's my question. When Mallinckrodt got this notice from McKesson in July 2013 that you had a Food City with 65% of its prescriptions as controlled substances, the fact that McKesson had stopped supplying controlled substances, did Mallinckrodt take any steps to investigate either the Food City or the nearby Bearden Clinic?
Objection form. Objection asked and answered.
So we're conducting a review of this pharmacy. We would have done a review of those prescribers. And as I sit here, I'm not aware about the Bearden Clinic.
Well, did you know that your own sales team had called the Bearden Clinic in March of 2013 a big glorified pill mill?
Objection foundation. Objection scope.
I'm not aware of that.
Have you ever conducted an investigation into these prescribers, Nagu, Brouch, Burchell, and Collins, as to their volume of prescribing?
Objection asked and answered.
So
Objection scope.
in relation to the review of this pharmacy, we were provided these prescribers, and we would have done some due diligence on them.
What sort of due diligence would you have done?
Yeah, so we would have looked to see if they were licensed, would have looked at the IMS data to see what level of prescribers they were, and then done an internet search. If we didn't find any disciplinary action, to see if there was any other information we could pull on these 4 prescribers.
Would there be any record of the searches that you conducted and any investigation that you did?
Objection.
My belief is yes.
What sort of record would we find?
Objection.
A prescriber, a database of prescribers. But actually, database isn't probably accurate. An Excel spreadsheet on prescribers
So
that
you-
we looked at. So typically, we review this prescriber, we put him on the list that we reviewed of prescribers.
And you have a single list of prescribers that you investigated within Mallinckrodt?
Objection scope.
We had a list.
You had a list of prescribers that you investigated? Is that maintained today in Mallinckrodt's records?
Objection scope.
Is that document still in our records? That's my understanding, yes.
And that document contains all the prescribers that you've investigated?
Yes.
Does it show the dates on which the
And again, just
investigation?
let me clarify, not all, because that list isn't maintained today, because we don't have data points that we had back at this time. So we still conduct reviews of prescribers if we get them, which we almost don't get anymore. But that list is maintained, and it's my understanding that we had it at this time.
And what is the last date on which entries are made to the list of investigated prescribers you're talking about?
I believe it to be 2014, 2015 timeframe.
Do you know what the title of that document is?
I do not.
Okay. And how would I find that document within Mallinckrodt's files?
Objection scope.
I think if you looked at prescriber list, there you have it.
Okay.
I'm
And
pretty sure it was provided to you
next time.
guys.
Next time. I'm going to hand you a document, Exhibit 53. And do you see it's an email from Jennifer Buist to you, dated 7/22/2013?
Yes.
Okay. And she says, subject call to discuss Food City Pharmacy.
Yes.
And can you turn to the next page?
So counsel, I would note for the record that there's an information sheet and another email attached. Is that intended?
It is.
Okay.
And do you see that the Bates number, sir, on the first page of this exhibit is so tied up here? MNK-TNSTA 044-37502.
Yes.
And then do you see that the next page, which is document produced in native format, is the next sequence in the Bates number ends in 7503?
7503, yes.
Okay, now let's look at that document. Do you see this chart here?
Yes, I do.
And what kind of information is this?
So it's got the pharmacy information, address, DEA number, distributor, product, and then it's got some numbers.
And do you see that in May 2013 it appears that this Food City Pharmacy received 40,800 Oxy 30s?
Objection mischaracterizes the document.
Yes, I see the 40,800.
So do you see that in a single month this Food City received nearly 2/3 of the average amount that Mallinckrodt expected of Oxy 30s for a pharmacy to use in a year in a single month?
Objection form foundation.
So I see the 40,800. It's not that Mallinckrodt expected that number that I had provided earlier today. Just telling you that that's what the DEA said was the average.
Well, the DEA said the average for a pharmacy for an entire year was 69,000. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And here, Mallinckrodt is receiving 40,800 of those pills in a single month. Fair?
Objection form.
So, and I'm
Let me
sorry.
restate
Yeah,
that
because
question.
I think I misunderstood.
Here,
what you were
Mallinckrodt,
saying
not
there.
Mallinckrodt.
Yeah,
Here,
McKesson.
Food City Pharmacy is receiving from Mallinckrodt 40,800 Mallinckrodt Oxy 30 pills in May 2013. Is that what this document says?
Objection mischaracterizes the document.
So Mallinckrodt provided product to McKesson, and during that month, McKesson provided Food City
Go ahead, excuse me.
40,800.
McKesson provided Food City in May 2013 40,800 Mallinckrodt manufactured Oxy 30 pills. Fair?
That's what this is, yes.
Was that a red flag for diversion that in a single month this one Food City received 40,800 Mallinckrodt Oxy 30 pills when the DEA told Mallinckrodt that it expected a pharmacy to use 69,000 in an entire year?
Objection form.
No, and the Mallinckrodt, and DEA didn't tell us that was it. That number came from the DEA, but they didn't tell us that. We pulled it, we had to go out and find it on the internet, and that's how it came to us, so.
Well, did Mallinckrodt consider this figure, 40,800 Oxy 30 pills in a single month, to be a red flag for diversion?
Objection form.
No, but we are reviewing this pharmacy, and that might be one of the reasons that we were reviewing the pharmacy.
Well, how many would it have to be a red flag for diversion? What if a pharmacy received 100,000 pills in a single month? Would that be a red flag?
So-
Objection form.
It's a data point, one data point. It doesn't mean that there's diversion going on, doesn't mean that we're aware of diversion, but it is a data point to look at.
But is there any level that is just unacceptable to Mallinckrodt? Any level of pills being delivered to a Tennessee pharmacy?
Objection form foundation scope.
So again, we're going above what the regulations call for by pulling the chargeback data and looking at the pharmacy. And in this case, with just that one line of information, we're reviewing this pharmacy, and doesn't mean that there was diversion. But as I've stated, it appears that that number is the reason that we're looking at this pharmacy.
I mean, your own Assistant General Counsel had noted that this pharmacy was distributing or filling prescriptions for approximately 800,000 Oxy 30 pills a year. Fair?
Objection form.
And there was a reference to the 800,000, and if this is one of the pharmacies that's included in there.
Can you name for me any figure, any amount of Oxy 30s that this food city in Knoxville could sell that would be a red flag of diversion to Mallinckrodt?
Rejection form. Objection mischaracterizes his testimony.
So that would be a hypothetical, and I don't want to get into that. So I've already commented on the review of this pharmacy based on that number.
Okay, but I just want to make sure I gave you a chance to tell me a number of Oxy 30s distributed by a pharmacy in a year that Mallinckrodt would consider a red flag for diversion, and you're not giving me one?
Objection form mischaracterizes his testimony.
So no, I'm commenting on what actually happened here.
Let's look further at what actually happened with these food cities. Here's Exhibit 54. Do you see this as another pharmacy information?
Hold on. Give me a minute to
Go ahead.
at least get the exhibit across the table.
Same, right? It's the same exhibit. Do you see this as that pharmacy information sheet we looked at earlier?
Yes.
Okay, now do you see there is a notation on the sheet, which is a handwritten notation?
Yes.
Do you see it says suspension lifted week of 8/12/2013 for 3 stores. Script count is low. All of the CS have thresholds, and it lists a series of thresholds: Oxy 4K, Hydro 4K, Alprazolam 3K, and all other CS 1 to 2K.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, is this saying that McKesson has lifted its suspension of the Food City stores?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, did you ask McKesson to tell you what the basis for lifting the suspension was?
Yes.
And what did they say?
They advised us that they've placed thresholds on all the controlled substances, and then they listed what the thresholds were. For oxycodone, it was 4,000. For hydrocodone, it was 4,000. For alprazolam, it was 3,000. And all other controlled substances, it was 1 to 2,000. And all their controlled substances were under the thresholds for the month of August. And sorry, I can't make out that last word. So,
Let me see. Hold on. Are you still reading?
me, I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yes. My question is, did McKesson, first of all, did Mallinckrodt at this point take any action with McKesson after it determined that these Food City stores, as its Assistant General Counsel had indicated, had been selling hundreds of thousands of Oxy 30 pills. Did Mallinckrodt take any action to restrict McKesson to ensure that it did not continue to supply these huge volumes to Food Cities?
That was a very long question. Can I hear that read back?
Yeah.
Stop.
Okay, question. First of all, did Mallinckrodt at this point take any action with McKesson after it determined that these Food City stores, as Assistant General Counsel had indicated, had been selling hundreds of thousands of these pills? Did Mallinckrodt take any actions to restrict McKesson to ensure that it did not continue to supply these huge supplies to Food Cities?
Objection form, objection scope.
Do we have something that shows the supplies have been?
No, we didn't ship any suspicious orders.
So here, let me send you another document. Maybe you can help me with this. So here on 822,
Hold on, you seems to be reading the document.
Okay.
so in 2000, in August 2013, McKesson tells you they've imposed these limits on for Oxy, Hydro, and other opioids on the Food City on Hardin Valley Road. Fair?
Yes, that's what that pharmacy information sheet reflects.
And so they say we've reduced Hardin Valley Road Pharmacy to just 4,000 Oxy Codone tablets, I guess a month. Is that how I read that?
I'm sorry, could you state that question again?
Sure. Is what this handwritten note that says thresholds Oxy 4K means on Exhibit 54, that McKesson is telling you, Mallinckrodt, we're going to limit the shipments of oxycodone to the Hardin Valley Food City to just 4,000 pills a month. Is that right?
Objection form.
That's my understanding.
Okay, well, here's my confusion. First of all, the volume of controlled substances per tablets per month on that very pharmacy information sheet is 96,000. Does that reflect the prior month's prescriptions?
It does from January to March timeframe. At least that's my understanding, that the information that's in here, because I think if we go back, if my memory serves me correctly, if we go back to some of the other documents you showed me, ABC was ceasing to provide product to the Food City. McKesson was picking up as the new distributor, and these numbers are reflective of, it looks like from what was previously shown, ABC numbers.
Well, here's my confusion now. Look at Exhibit 55.
Yes,
So do you see this is for a different Food City on Chapman Highway?
I do.
Okay. And here, do you see that it has a listing for volume of oxycodone family tablets?
Yes,
Okay, and do you see it says 14,500 tablets a month?
yes,
And it's got 43,504 tablets from October through December 2013?
yes.
So, did McKesson not restrict the other food cities, just let them distribute as much oxycodone as people demanded?
Objection form, objection scope.
So I don't know what McKesson did when we're looking at Hardin Valley. They've got these thresholds, and I don't know whether those thresholds applied to this food city.
Well, we can tell that the thresholds didn't apply to the food city that's listed in Exhibit 55 because its volume of oxycodone vastly exceeds those thresholds, right?
Objection form, objection foundation.
So I don't know what the thresholds were for this pharmacy.
We know it certainly wasn't 4,000 oxycodone a month, right?
I don't know
Objection.
that.
Well, we do know that a pharmacy that is filling prescriptions for 43,504 tablets of oxycodone from October through December is filling prescriptions for a lot more than 4,000 a month, right?
Yes.
So my point is, did it trouble anyone at Mallinckrodt that after all this discussion with McKesson about cutting back the oxycodone distributed at one food city pharmacy, that essentially the volume just shifted over to another food city pharmacy over the hill in another part of this same area?
Objection form, objection foundation.
I don't know that.
Do you think it really helps people in Knoxville or East Tennessee get a handle on diversion when people from the Bearden glorified pill mill can simply shift from one food city to another to get their opioids?
Objection form, foundation, scope.
Again, I don't know that that's what's taking place.
Did Mallinckrodt ever send an investigator physically into Knoxville to investigate Food City?
We reviewed the pharmacies. I'm unaware of anybody going into Tennessee.
Did anybody in Mallinckrodt talk to law enforcement in Knoxville about the Bearden Clinic or the Food Cities?
No, that I'm not aware of that, and I believe I stated that previously.
Has anyone at Mallinckrodt at any time tallied up all the people that worked at the Bearden Clinic to figure out how many of them have been disciplined by their licensing boards?
Objection form, foundation, beyond the scope.
So if prescribers came to our attention, we would review the prescriber information, and if they weren't listed as a high prescriber at a particular pharmacy, no.
I'd like to hand you another document, Mallinckrodt Exhibit 56. Do you see that you have a listing or a document here at Exhibit 56 that lists a series of prescribers whose prescriptions were filled at Food City?
Yes.
Okay. And is this a Mallinckrodt record created by IQVIA data?
Objection beyond the scope.
It's created from several sources.
And tell me what sources it's created by.
Sure.
Objection beyond the scope.
Sure. So this is the document I was talking about earlier. So every time a prescriber was provided to us, one of the things we would look at is the IMS data. So that's contained in here.
And what does the IMS data show you?
Objection overly broad, vague.
So it shows the number of prescriptions that this prescriber is writing. And it shows various ranks of their prescribing habits.
So in May of 2013, Mallinckrodt evaluated the number of prescriptions that these prescribers were writing.
So to be accurate, in July of 2013, and I could be wrong, but I thought you said May.
I'm looking at the document itself. I see. So this was provided, the document was created in July 2013.
That's when the information is provided. So this portion of it is, these prescribers were identified as a result of pharmacy reviews being conducted by McKesson. So the information was provided by McKesson, i.e. the prescriber was provided by McKesson as a result of a pharmacy review. And the date is the date it was provided. And then you see the date that the IMS data is good through.
And do you see that, so the date the IMS data is good through is May 2013?
Yeah, so that's when we would have received that information. And then it goes on to show that we checked for licenses, which were all active. And then we checked for disciplinary action with the Board of Pharmacy, and we didn't find any.
And did anyone check with the sales team to see what their on-the-ground observations were of the clinic where these people had worked, or the people themselves?
Objection.
I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware whether anyone checked with the sales staff to see if these people worked at a clinic identified as a pill mill by your own sales team?
Objection form, foundation.
I don't know whether they did or did not.
Do you, if these people worked at a pill mill, would it have mattered to Mallinckrodt?
Objection form, foundation.
It would have been a data point.
So Mallinckrodt considers people working at a pill mill in the state of Tennessee to be a data point?
So
Objection mischaracterizes his testimony. Objection form.
I don't know that was a pill mill as I sit here now, and I don't know whether somebody at Mallinckrodt looked into it.
But you said it was a data point.
Could be a data point, that's correct.
Do you see the volume, TRX, all opioids? Do you see that, that column right there?
Yes.
And TRX means prescriptions?
Yes.
And this is a figure that you get from IQVIA data or IMS data, as it's called?
Yes.
Those are synonyms. IMS data means IQVIA data and vice versa.
Objection.
Fair.
Objection form, foundation scope.
So I know it to be IMS data, but I think there was some change in ownership.
Point is, the name, they're different names for the same type of data.
Objection.
Uh,
Same objections.
So I'm sorry, I never knew it to be IQVIA data, but I believe that one or the other bought the other, so I'm okay if you're going to use those interchangeably.
And
but I know it is IMS data.
And what you know is IMS data tells you how many prescriptions of particular drugs these physicians write.
Yes, that's what that shows.
And for example, that means that Teodor Neagu wrote for all opioids 9,013 prescriptions during this time period.
Objection vague as the time period.
So I don't know the overall time period that number was written, but that's what it reflects.
Okay, and here we've got Brandy Burchell is, she's written 7,131 opioid prescriptions during the time period.
Yes.
Objection.
And then Christina Collins has written 6,913 during that time period.
Objection vague.
Yes,
Do you see there are rankings like Oxy 30 rank?
I do.
Is that rankings in the nation for all prescribers?
Objection.
That's my understanding.
Now, were these prescription levels a red flag for diversion? These prescription levels that are listed on this exhibit that you're looking at right now?
Objection form.
Not necessarily.
What do you mean by not necessarily?
I mean, it could be, but not in and of itself.
A high prescription level could be a red flag for diversion?
Objection form.
It doesn't mean that it is, but it could be.
And do you see that there's a statement that about the fourth block in that says on target list? Do you see that?
I do.
What does on target list mean?
So my understanding is that these prescribers were on the list of our sales team to contact.
These are prescribers that your sales team has been directed to go out and talk to promote Mallinckrodt products during this time?
Objection form. Objection scope.
They're on a list for them to consider going out and contacting. Whether they did or not, I don't know.
And could you turn to Exhibit 23? You've got it in a stack right here. Do you have that in front of you? Exhibit 23?
I do.
I'm going to represent, I don't know if you've seen this list. Well, I'll ask you, have you seen this list of 3-star prescribers by Mallinckrodt?
Objection form. Objection beyond the scope.
I have not.
Okay. Let me ask you, can you just flip to the list that is attached to Exhibit 23? Do you see that?
I do.
Can you look at the cell that's 765 and tell me if you see Christina Collins is listed?
Yes.
Okay, and do you see that she's one of the prescribers that on Exhibit 56 that Mallinckrodt evaluated with respect to level of prescriptions?
Yes.
She's one of the people that worked at the Bearden Clinic.
Objection foundation.
I don't know if she worked there, but
But she is one of the prescribers that you looked at in connection with your investigation of Food City?
of our review of Food City, yes.
Okay, and Theodore Nagu, she's also on your 3-star prescriber list. She's at cell 768. Do you see that?
Objection form. Scope.
Yes.
Okay, and then Brandy Burchell, she's at 843 on the 3-star prescriber list. Do you see that?
Objection form. Scope.
Yes.
Okay, and all 3 of these prescribers are prescribers that appear on Exhibit 56, which is the list of prescribers whose volume of prescriptions Mallinckrodt was looking at the time McKesson was investigating Food City.
Sorry, could you restate that
Sure.
question?
I just want to make sure. You looked at the 3-star prescriber list, and 3 of them, Theodore Nago, Brandy Burchell, and Christina Collins, are 3 prescribers that show up on Exhibit 56, which is this sheet that was generated when Mallinckrodt looked at prescribers in connection with Food City?
The review of that particular Food City, yes.
Did Mallinckrodt keep track of, once these prescribers have been brought to its attention, did Mallinckrodt do anything to keep track of these prescribers and see whether or not their higher volume prescribing resulted in board discipline, convictions for crimes or other actions that would suggest they were involved with diversion?
Objection form.
So every time a prescriber would come to our attention, so if any of these prescribers listed here would come to our attention in another pharmacy review, then we would reference back to this list and we would update it. So if there was new information, we'd provide the new information in here.
Yeah, 56. Now, I'd like to hand you another document. This is Exhibit 57. Do you see Exhibit 57?
I do.
What is it?
It's a memo from me of a meeting with the DEA.
Okay, and is this a file memo that you wrote that describes your conversations with the DEA?
Yes.
I take it again, when you write these memos, you try to create an accurate description of your discussions with the DEA?
Yes.
You put in the important information that you talk about? Fair?
Yes.
Now, do you see that you state in your fourth paragraph down, the top 10% of narcotics prescribers write an average of 1,716 narcotic analgesic prescriptions a year. The top 10% of hydrocodone APAP prescribers write an average of 1,100 or 1,010 hydrocodone APAP prescriptions a year. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, do you see that if you turn back to Exhibit 56, do you see that the three prescribers that you looked at, or three of the four prescribers that you looked at in connection with Food City, prescribed many times those amounts of opioids?
Objection form.
Yes.
And do you see that Exhibit 56, generated in connection with Food City, was created in July of 2013? Do you see that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sure. Do you see that where it says date provided, that the date for Exhibit 56, looking at these prescribers
Yes.
in connection with Food City, is July 2013?
Yes.
Okay, so that comes after your meeting with the DEA that you detail in your memo of October 5th, 2012. That's Exhibit 57. Is that fair?
Yes.
So, did it concern Mallinckrodt that Teodora Negu had prescribed opioids at a rate, 5 times the average for the top 10% of narcotic analgesic prescribers?
Objection form, foundation.
So it was a data point that we used in our discussions with McKesson.
Well, was there any level of prescribing above and beyond the averages for the top 10% narcotics prescribers that would be a red flag for diversion?
Objection form, foundation, scope.
No, not necessarily.
Do you see that in this document that your memo of October 5th, 2012, you note, according to available data from September 11th to 2011, pardon me, I'll say that again. Do you see where you write in this October 5th, 2012 memorandum, according to available data from September 2011 to September 2012, Dr. Andreasen wrote more than 29,000 narcotic prescriptions, of which more than 13 were for hydrocodone?
Yes.
And why do you mention that?
Objection form.
This is a doctor that I'm referring to the DEA to take a look at because he was a high prescriber for a number of pharmacies that I was looking at. This is what I talked about earlier in the day. So this is the doctor, Dr. Andreessen.
And what about do you see you talk about Dr. Gurpreet Pata?
Yes.
Why were you talking about Dr. Gurpreet Pata?
So there was another pharmacy that I reviewed that had outstanding internal controls, but a majority of the scripts, in excess of 90+%, if my recollection serves me correctly, was written from this doctor to that one pharmacy.
Do you see where you say in between September 2011 to September 2012, Dr. Pata wrote more than 6,000 narcotic prescriptions, of which more than 3,000 were for hydrocodone?
Yes.
And so you raised those numbers with the DEA?
Objection.
Yes. After a review of the pharmacy, reflected that most of the prescriptions came from one doctor.
But do you see that the 3 of the 4 prescribers you looked at in connection with Food City, Theodore Nagu, Brandy Burchell, and Christina Collins, they all wrote more prescriptions than this Dr. Pata fellow that you mentioned in your October 2012 discussions with the DEA, fair?
Objection form, foundation.
Yes.
How come you didn't report them to the DEA?
Objection form, foundation, beyond the scope.
So it's, like as I stated earlier, it's a data point, and I didn't have anything else that led me to report them. And in this situation, even to the DEA, I have nothing to go by on whether they did anything wrong, but an additional data point, especially for Dr. Pata, was the fact that that one pharmacy I looked at, almost all their scripts came from just one doctor.
Do you think maybe that talking to somebody who'd actually been in the office where Theodore Nagu, Brandy Burchell, and Christina Collins prescribed might have helped flesh out your understanding of the nature of their high levels of prescribing?
Objection form, objection scope.
And as I stated earlier, I don't know if anybody did.
Anyone at Mallinckrodt ever tell you not to examine certain prescribers on Mallinckrodt's target list?
Never.
Let me hand you Exhibit 58. Do you see it right now? Do you see that you've been handed a document entitled IMS High Prescribers through January 2013?
Yes.
And looking at the document, is that a Mallinckrodt is that a Mallinckrodt document?
I'm going to object to the form of the question. I'm going to object to Exhibit 56 as an excerpt that's been manipulated by counsel.
I don't know if this is a Mallinckrodt created document.
Well, does it look like a document that comes from information that Mallinckrodt maintains?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
No, it looks like it's information that came from IMS data.
And Mallinckrodt maintains IMS data?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
We did.
And can you just turn to the first page? And do you see that it appears to list prescriptions by prescriber for the period December 11 to November 2012?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
I mean, I'm confused by the dates at the top, and I mean, it says December 11th, November 12th, but it says February 12th, January 13, excludes hospitals. So just want to make sure we're on the right page. Is that what you're talking about, or do you have?
Yeah, well, what I'm reading is, I'll tell you what, you're familiar with Mallinckrodt's system, so why don't you tell me, as you look at this report, what date is covered by this report? What date of prescribing?
Objection, form, foundation, and scope.
So, as I've testified, I don't know this to be a Mallinckrodt document. This looks to be IMS data. So this, and it says the source is IMS. So I'm sorry, I don't know the dates.
Okay, and what it says at the top is source IMX exponent February 12th dash January 13. Do you see that?
I do.
Goes on from there.
And then it goes on from there. There's it says excludes hospitals, semicolon, IMS, LRX exponent December 11 to November 2012. Fair?
It goes on
It
from there.
It says sample data not projected.
Okay.
Okay.
Tell you what, let's just clear up the record. Read the whole, we're looking at the first page of this spreadsheet. Fair?
Okay.
Okay. Read the entire text from cell 1.
I'm sorry. Am I on the cover page, or am I
No, the
back on
next page.
1? Okay.
I'll object on the basis of form, foundation, and scope.
All right. In line 1, source IMS exponent, comma, February 12 dash January 13, parentheses, excludes hospitals, comma, etc., close parentheses, semicolon. IMS LRX exponent, December 11 through November 12, parentheses, sample data, comma, not projected, close parentheses.
Okay, and we'll have to clarify the year in question, but do you see that what it has is it has a list of prescriptions for all opioids, for hydro APAP, for oxy-IR, and a series of other data components with respect to particular prescribers?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
Yes.
Okay, do you see that you've got prescriptions for all opioids listed?
Yes.
Same objections.
And do you know if Mallinckrodt today maintains IMS data establishing or that would enable somebody to determine all the opioids prescribed by a particular doctor in Tennessee for a given year?
Objection, assumes a fact, not an evidence. Objection, foundation. Objection, beyond the scope.
No.
Do you know if in 2016 Mallinckrodt maintained IMS data that allowed it to determine the opioids prescribed by a Tennessee prescriber for a given year?
Same objections.
So as I testified earlier, I believe it was either 2014 or 2015 that we stopped receiving IMS data.
Well, when you had IMS data before you stopped, was it always possible to determine the amount of all opioids prescribed by a Tennessee provider?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
During the time that we had the IMS data, we could look at the data and see all the opioids prescribed.
And you could also see the hydroapap opioids prescribed for a given period?
Objection, form, foundations beyond the scope that this has been designated on.
Yes, that's what it says.
And similarly, you could determine when Mallinckrodt maintained IMS data, the Oxy-IR prescriptions written by a particular prescriber in Tennessee for a time period.
Same objections.
Yes.
And one time period you could look at would be a year, fair?
That's my understanding.
You could look at, for any given doctor in Tennessee, when Mallinckrodt maintained IMS data, the doctor's total opioid prescriptions, the hydroapap prescriptions, and the Oxy-IR prescriptions for a given year.
Objection, form, foundation, and scope.
And again, my understanding is that the data would come in either the quarter or the year after, and yes.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of the doctors on this list right here. Do you see the first one's Robert Cochran?
Yes.
And do you see that he has prescribed for all opioids 26,380?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
Yes.
Okay, and that is many, many times the 1,716 narcotic analgesic prescriptions prescribed by the top 10% of prescribers as outlined in your October 2012 memo. Fair?
Objection, form, foundation, scope. Unclear is the time period.
Do you see that?
Yes.
I mean, you've got on the front page of this document a listing of a multitude of prescribers, starting with Robert Cochran and going down to Teodora Negu. Do you see that?
You're just asking me to read the document?
I'm just asking him to answer the question. Do you see that?
I see.
Objection to the form, foundation, and scope.
And do you see that every single prescriber on page 1 as marked, every single prescriber is in the state of Tennessee? Do you see that?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
Yes.
And every prescriber on this page is prescribing over 9,000 prescriptions of opioids for the given period. Fair?
Are you asking me to read the document?
I'm asking him to answer the question.
Objection, form, foundation, and scope.
Yes.
And all those numbers, 9,000, that's many times the top 10%, or many times the average prescriptions for opioids written by the top 10% of narcotics prescribers as indicated by you in your discussions with the DEA?
Objection, form, foundation, and scope.
Yes.
Can you look at Exhibit 58 and identify any doctor in Tennessee that you refer to the Drug Enforcement Administration?
Objection, form, foundation, beyond the scope.
Not while I sit here now. I'm not sure which of these, other than the ones that we've gone through, that we even reviewed.
So the fact that a doctor prescribed 9,000 prescriptions of opioids in a year wouldn't in and of itself yield a review?
So,
Objection.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, I thought I mentioned this earlier, maybe I didn't. The DEA has this information, so I didn't need to tell them something that they already had.
That wasn't my question, though.
I'm sorry,
My
then I
question,
misunderstood your question.
I understand. My question is simply whether or not you've got this list of prescribers, many of whom prescribe many more thousands of opioids than the 1,706 opioid average for the top 10% prescribers. Fair?
Objection. Form, foundation, scope.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to figure out, for any reason, whether Mallinckrodt referred any of these prescribers on Exhibit 58 to the DEA for an investigation in the way that you've referred a couple of prescribers outlined in your October 5th, 2012 memo.
So,
Objection. Form, foundation is beyond the scope for which this witness was designated.
as I sit here now, I know we reviewed these 4 prescribers. I'm not sure if we reviewed any of these other prescribers. And as far as referring the prescribers to the DEA, I would be referring them for some reason that I don't know why I would be referring them, other than having a review that I conducted, that there were other data points that triggered me to tell them for information that they already have.
I just want to make sure that you're here as a corporate representative for Mallinckrodt in the Tennessee litigation. As we sit here today, you can't identify any Tennessee prescriber that you referred to the Drug Enforcement Administration. Fair?
And I'm going to object because it's beyond the scope of what he's been designated for, so he's not here as a representative on that question.
I think I've answered this 3 times now, so could you state it one more time?
Sure. I just want to make sure I'm clear that as you're sitting here today, you can't point me to a single Tennessee prescriber that you referred to the Drug Enforcement Administration. Fair?
Objection. Form, foundation, scope, asked and answered.
So, yes, I have on that question, but I'll take it one step further. If you're referring to Tennessee, as I sit here now,
Yeah.
no, I don't have that information.
Okay. And does Mallinckrodt agree that some prescribers overprescribe opioids?
Objection. Beyond the scope. Form.
So, we don't know what they're prescribing for. We can see through this IMS data the numbers. So it's hard to make a call on whether they're overprescribing for patients that we know nothing about.
Well, but is Mallinckrodt aware that some prescribers overprescribe opioids?
Objection. Form. Objection. Scope. Asked and answered.
So, yes, we're aware that there are unscrupulous doctors out there.
And Mallinckrodt is aware that there are prescribers that write prescriptions outside the legitimate medical need?
Objection. Form, foundation, beyond the scope.
No.
And can Mallinckrodt use IMS data to determine which prescribers are likely engaged in diversion?
Objection.
No.
So even if IMS data shows a prescriber, as indicated on Exhibit 58, is prescribing 26,380 opioid prescriptions in a year, that's not in and of itself a red flag for diversion?
Objection. Form, foundation, scope.
It doesn't mean that there's an indication of diversion there, just by the number of scripts that are written.
Did Mallinckrodt ever conduct a study to determine whether high prescribers of opioids were more likely than other prescribers to be subject to professional discipline?
Objection. Forum Foundation, you asked that this morning. Scope as well.
I'm unaware.
Next document.
We hit a good place for a lunch break.
Sure.
Good.
We're going off the record at 12:15